know who Brocade is, so I wanted to give a brief background on what the company is. Company was founded in 1995 with a very, very deep expertise in storage area networking. And with that, along with the expertise in data center reliability, availability, and those kind of good adjectives. And we have subsequently grown to being about $2.1 billion. And next week, actually, we announced the results for year 2011. And as part of our growth strategy, we have certainly expanded our portfolio to beyond the storage area networks. And we actually offer offering across the entire networking space, including the core data center, enterprise campus LANs, as well as some of the largest service providers in the market. We do operate globally, so really leveraging a lot of the OEM and channel who are there, and that actually enables us to have a certain level of efficiency in the market, which is very, very unique in the high-tech space. And last but not the least, there is a lot of talk around fiber channel over Ethernet and those kind of things, and certainly Brocade is one of the companies which is leading the change in that space. Right, from an agenda perspective, as I mentioned before, I would like to take a few minutes around what we mean at Brocade as by cloud computing. I know there's a lot of definitions floating around. When this thing started about 4 years ago, cloud meant different things to different people, and I want to make sure at least I set the context that everything we talk about that is based on that specific definition. Little bit about Brocade's cloud computing strategy from a go-to-market, from a product development perspective, and then really spend more than 2/3 of the discussions and speech around what is our IT enablement strategy, as well as what is the lessons we have learned. So this is one of those classic mom and apple pie journey slides. We all have been through the IBM mainframe, mini computing, client server, utility computing, virtualization kind of spaces. But what is really important to us as IT professionals is we have been asked over and over again to optimize across multiple dimensions. And two of the dimensions I would like to talk about today are really around financial efficiency and business agility. And financial efficiency for me is to be the ability to offer business services within the financial envelope determined by the company. And this is very tricky because the more efficient you get, the financial envelope keeps shrinking, right? And business agility is the component I would really like to talk a little more about. Far too often, we talk about business agility as the ability to deliver new business services. For me, this is more important to see how flexible we are and how we are able to offer new services while carrying some of the legacy load we have with us, right? Which as an IT organization, those things become more important as against just being able to deliver something new. So the next element of this cloud journey, if you think about this, is broadly the market can be defined into two different categories. One is what I would call, if you have standard business services, you can actually go after what we call software as a service, different providers who provide that. And certainly there is a certain element of customization and configuration which is facilitated through those services. However, if you have what I call specific custom applications, things which are used once in a while, you certainly need to look at cloud providers who are more infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. Those are things which makes a lot more sense, and you'll certainly find these in what I would call special niche areas. When I say niche, it doesn't mean small, they are huge. They're just very specialized compared to normal business processing. Now, from a cloud definition perspective, I really like to break this into three specific areas. One is the private cloud, one is the public cloud, one is the hybrid cloud. And a lot of us, when we undertake this journey, we are starting with no green field. We all run a data center. We have certain, legacy environment we are managing with. And private clouds for me are cloud environments you're actually running in your own data center, wherein you've gone away from the paradigm of provisioning server storage specific to a particular application, and you have virtualized the environment to where you can do multi-tiered application, automatic provisioning, automatic scaling up, and those kind of environments. That's the capability which gets you into a private cloud. Public cloud obviously is where you're taking the advantage of the service providers out there, but to be very clear, I would like to define public cloud as something which you can instantiate and shut down, right? So this is something we need to be very clear on the definition, and I'm really defining this, at least in the context of this speech and discussion, to be something which you can dynamically create and dynamically shut down. And the next part, which is the hybrid cloud, really takes advantage of the public clouds, but this is elements of the public cloud which once they are instantiated, they're actually persistent and they have a long life, right? And invariably as enterprise IT organization taking advantage of the public cloud services, what we end up doing is a hybrid cloud, right? And the advantages are very clear. From a private cloud perspective, you certainly have a lot more scalability from within the assets you've already deployed. When you go to public cloud, you take the advantage of the massive scale which is provided, so you don't really have to wait for buying new hardware and storage and things like that. And from a hybrid cloud perspective, it really gives you the bridge between private and public and lets you determine the right balance of what you want to keep in-house and what you want to really send out in the public clouds. And obviously, all of them have some operational and cost advantages. Now, from a challenges perspective, I'm going to stay at the core, infrastructure level right now. A lot of the things we found as we undertook this journey was that a flatter, simpler network was a must-have. Right? I mean, the compute capacity is what it is, and I'll talk a little more about storage. But from a networking perspective, these are some of the things we learned. And certainly, your speed requirements go up, right? If you look at some of the CPUs out there, we went from dual core to quad core to now deca core and soon deci core, I guess. What happens is the challenges of a lot of the server to CPU, to storage, actually ends up being at the edge of the server, and we're looking at I/O port efficiencies and those kind of things, which all tie back into your network management. Moving to the more public cloud, the challenges become more to do with intelligence of the networks, how you're able to provision them, how you're able to deprovision them, and certainly from a scalability perspective, they need to meet an order of magnitude higher than what is expected in private clouds. And a hybrid cloud, which in my opinion is still evolving in a lot of dimensions, really is dependent on interoperability standards, a lot of open standards, and from a provisioning perspective, the challenges of provisioning hybrid clouds is a lot higher than public clouds, where in essence, you are combining what is in-house and what is in the public cloud, and you got to mesh two of these different provisioning mechanisms together so that from an IT operational perspective, you have something which is, really works for everybody. And obviously, there's a lot of policies around it which need to be, actively managed. So what is Brocade doing about it? From a product perspective, we have actually taken the big step. The traditional way of buying any hardware component was you buy it, it hits your CapEx, and you go with that. We have introduced a new way of acquiring what I would call cloud-optimized network infrastructure, purely on a monthly subscription basis. So it's not a lease. A lease typically hits your balance sheet and shows up as a liability there. And if you're outright purchasing, it's a CapEx with all the depreciation tail which it entails. The offering is pretty much flexible, open-ended, and we work through public cloud partners to enable this innovation in the market so that our customers can really take advantage of this flexible model with minimal risk, with minimal investment other than your capital, your regular expense run rate. So I would like to take a moment to talk about one of our customers, and this is a quote from the VP of Technology from Rackspace, and John here is going to follow me on this discussion, which is really Brocade Network Subscription perfectly aligns to our business model, and Rackspace is in the business of of clouds, as it provides the networking capabilities on a metered basis as we need it, very much the same way as our customers utilize our own services. So in the larger scheme of cloud services, Brocade is an arms supplier. We supply certain critical components of cloud, and we want to make sure our offerings pretty much tailor to what the cloud service providers themselves do. So I'm going to shift to our journey within IT. About 3 years ago, our internal data center landscape was pretty similar to what I would suspect a lot of you see out there, which is hardware was provisioned to a particular application, locked down to that application. If the requirements of the application changed, we had to provision new hardware on a one-off basis, pretty much resulting in very low utilization of what I would like to call deployed assets, resulting in server sprawl, and as in the previous session, you heard a lot about cooling, heating, those kind of data center operational inefficiencies. More importantly, from a IT operations perspective, we really had to do a lot of one-off backup and recovery procedures based on the technology, the operating systems, and things like that. And subsequently to that, we have undertaken a journey which took us almost 18 months to 2 years. And I'm happy to report about 75% of our corporate data center infrastructure is completely on a virtualized private cloud environment. And we have broken the compute environment into 3 categories. I would like to call them Platinum, Tier 1, and Tier 2. Obviously, mission critical ones go on Tier 1, the less departmental critical go on the mission critical go on Platinum, department critical go on Tier 1, and the more the dev testing environments go on Tier 2. And what we have found is a dramatic improvement in what is to be an old classic measure, which is the number of operating systems instances managed by sysadmin. So if you have a metric like that, which measures your internal efficiencies, there is a dramatic increase once we go to this environment. And second dramatic increase we find is that our overall utilization of our deployed assets is actually gone up by more than 3x, right? From an internal implementation perspective, I really don't want to go into specific vendor names too much, but we predominantly have 2 private clouds. One is around the x86 architecture, and one is around the Spark architecture. Okay. So moving on to the storage area, we pretty much had, since we are a dominant force in the storage area networking business, we had storage from all the dominant players out there. And a lot of it was aging, and this is not new for anybody. We all have to go through this technology refresh cycle. And provisioning and upgrades were taking a long time. And certainly from a backup and recovery, we pretty much had different procedures depending on the technology we used. And we did move to what I would call a virtualized storage environment. And again, as before with the compute environment, we actually broke this into 3 different tiers: Platinum, Tier 1, and Tier 2. And we certainly have driven a lot of improvements in the utilization. And from a migration, it was very, very easy. The challenges we find is that the easy admin, the promise of easy admin is not there yet. The technology is still maturing. And certainly, if you look at virtualization of storage across multiple vendors, we have a long way to go. And so these are things we are working with our storage partners to make sure these things happen. And oh, by the way, all these initiatives is wrapped around internally, what we call eat your own dog food, fly your own airplane initiatives too. So from a networking perspective, we'll be very soon, we do use, end-to-end all Brocade equipment. And we will be going through IPv6 as part of one step. And within the next 8 to 12 months, we will be implementing Trill in our data center. And a lot of this is really emerging stuff. But the benefits I can tell you is if you folks are used to VMware, and if you know what vMotion is, the ability to move an operating system instance with its application from one server to another without disruption of the service, with Trill, you actually get the ability to move it across data centers. So you could have a data center in San Jose, and you could have a data center in Boston, and you could actually do a vMotion of a live instance of an operating systems with the application across the continent. And it gives you a completely different set of operating principles under which we can operate. So moving to the application side, I'm not sure how much time we have. We done? Okay. Take a couple of minutes. From a strategy perspective, I just wanted to give you an idea of where we are on the business application side. We are predominantly an Oracle shop, and I wanted to give you some classic ideas of what we are doing from a business service perspective. I've been asked to hurry. So from business services to getting to the cloud, the two things we found which was very important was to have some foundation services done. So two of the areas we really worked very hard on is to make sure we had a very strong strategy around integration, and we had the foundation around authentication, authorization for our applications as we undertake this in-house to hybrid cloud environment. So why Brocade chose this strategy? The number one reason is IT isn't slow anymore, right? It's our ability to deploy services in a much, much quicker way. This was, I would say that's the number one priority. The number two priority is really about cost and efficiency and those kind of things. So as the business changes, can IT keep up, right? And we find that by going to the cloud as well as SaaS, we are able to really move fast. Where are we? We completed the low-hanging fruits. So there's a laundry list of services we moved out: payroll, time card, travel booking, travel expenses, recruiting, education, document management, stock options, chat, voice, video conferencing. They've all been moved to the cloud. As I mentioned before, we laid the foundation for authentication authorization, as well as for a very core integration strategy. We have taken the initial steps for core enterprises. We have actually moved our quotation systems to the cloud. We are on Sales CRM is on the cloud, and we are actually an early adopter of Oracle HR Talent Management Fusion. So folks who are using Oracle EBS, we actually are an early adopter of Fusion in the cloud. Mobile, our strategy is, that's not a phrase you might have heard very often. That's an internal phrase. That's kitchen sink as a service. What I decided long back was, our IT organization, we could not keep up with all the changes happening in the mobile space, and we certainly were not UI experts worried about quarter VGA, half VGA, and what have you. So we decided to actually move to the cloud from a development perspective, from a platform perspective, from an infrastructure perspective, the entire kitchen sink, if you want to call it. And I focused my group on predominantly focusing on web services. So we write web services which take the internal data and provide it to our partners so they can deliver it on the mobile platform. The next steps as we are going through are really the service cloud, and the next one is the VDI, which is more to do with remote access and those kind of things. Sorry, I'll just take a minute more and I'll wrap up. What did we learn? One of the things we tried to do was to take care of use the public cloud's economies of scale to move our development and test environments to the cloud. And it didn't work, right? Because the amount of data we had to move back and forth and how often we had to move it was way too high. So we kind of backed off from that. Security and privacy, vendor to vendor, the policies, and how they operate are very different, and we are finding it's very hard to make a call, right? As I mentioned to you, cloud integration. One of the challenges we are really facing is when do you replicate the data, when do you decide to make a real-time call, where your application from your SaaS provider is actually making a real-time call to your in-house data and running your applications that way. We are using Oracle SOA. We're finding the performance is good, but we certainly see challenges, with high availability and reliability. Obviously, as for companies much larger size, these issues are handled at a different financial envelope. And one of the things I have done is I'm trying to move to a centralized model as far as integration goes. Now, the next one, which is, I would say, the biggest challenges we have faced is having some internal processes to recognize the real thing. What I'm finding is there is a lot of mom and pop SaaS operators out there now. They're just coming out of the woodwork, right? This thing is really catching on, and their maturity is not very high. They're all posing as enterprise vendors, and you as a customer need to figure out what is the process you put in place to recognize, who's a mom and pop shop and who's a really enterprise vendor. And please do remember, your SLA is only as good as the first outage, because there is no contract out there which is really going to reimburse you for all the damages you face as a business, right? And last, which is more a business interaction challenge, is what we are finding is the business does go out on its own and sign up SaaS providers. So it comes as a surprise to the established, business prioritization, business acceptance, processes we have put in place as IT. It does come as a surprise once in a while. So these are all the challenges we have done, and we have taken some, remedial measures. With that, there's a future of corporate IT. All I can say is there is some fundamental changes to our IT organizations as we view it today. And really, from an organization perspective, what I really see is that more and more IT gets embedded within business itself, right? I think that's the most significant one. There are other bullets there, but in lieu of time, I'll stop here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.